Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Practice Center, where we practice all things
mindfulness, forgiveness, attitudinal healing.
Yay! My name is Joey Reese. I'm so happy to have you all here with us. Us meaning Nicole and myself. Nicole has been a part of our mindful forgiveness community for a little while now. She's participated in mindful forgiveness, as well as attitudinal healing, the peer support group, as well as the intro presentation series. So I'm really excited to be chatting with you today, Nicole. Welcome. Will you share with us a little bit about who you are?
Who I am. I can share about the roles I play. I show up as a mother, an artist, a dancer, a writer, a speaker, a all-around creative. I call myself a multi-creator. And I am excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me and welcoming me to have this conversation.
So Nicole, first question is, what brought you to mindful forgiveness? Because you reached out to me cold online, and it was actually for work, right? But what has kept you like completing the workshop and then coming back for other things? I'm just curious to hear about like how it's impacted you in your work life or in those roles that you play. And has it impacted those other roles? Yeah, so please take it away.
Well, I have to be honest, you were a big draw, your energy, your presence, and your practice. When I found you online, it was through a Facebook post. So then I went to the website and then I went to a YouTube video. So how you shared what you do in a very authentic, transparent, but also in a way that shows, oh, she's not just preaching, she's actually practicing this. Cool. And what drew me was that I've been on this path towards learning mindfulness. I will admit that many of my previous years were more in the theoretical, I'm going to read a book, right?
Yes.
Then in the recent years, in the past, I want to say since 2019, life has been unfolding in ways where now I'm just like, okay, I need these tools to actually use. And so when I saw the videos and that combination of how you shared what you do, it really piqued my interest. And the work that I was doing with the job that I wanted to bring it on in that capacity because I could see this benefiting so many people, but also it really rooted from my interest of learning how to practice. And that really, all honesty, it was coming from a place of, I need it now, help.
So what was it about then what you were doing with us that you were able to take? And because when we first popped on here, you're like, I'm in the practice. And I'm like, okay, can you talk a little bit about what does that look like? Why was it different? How was what we were doing able to take that theoretical piece and actually bring it into your body? Because that's one of my taglines that I'll use like on the website and stuff is knowing is not enough. Having a PhD in this stuff is not enough. That's not enough. So can you talk a little bit about how it was not enough for you and what this is, how this is different? Like ground that for me a little bit.
One thing I will say that before the not enough that there, it served a purpose. So I won't poo-poo on it, but it was mainly focused on like the text, like big words, and these, very abstract concepts that were higher level where I'm like, okay, I get it. But the way you approach the breaking it down and the fact that, within me, the little girl in me still lives. So it's just like my attention span kind of short. So your delivery of not only how you share your personal story, but also the visuals. I'm also a visual learner. And one of the things in particular, I remember you were the first person who hit me on to when you're just ruminating. and like seeing that, like almost like a dark cloud, and the way you describe it, I was able to translate moments in my life where I'm like, I'm doing that rumination thing. So for me, the way you encapsulate not only the concepts, but linking it to how it shows up is helping me recognize how it shows up. So a lot of the practice that I've been doing is really in the practice of awareness of really having the language to recognize when I'm not being aware, when I'm not being mindful. And that's like the first step to being mindful.
Exactly, my friend. So what did you catch yourself ruminating on?
Well, what often my habit that I'm transitioning out of is when someone does something. Like, for example, there was this challenge at it's always a challenge with a person, and I found myself like, oh, I'm hurt.
Yes.
They did this, they did that, they should have, and all the things. And so what wound up happening was me ruminating on this singular event, but then creating all the stories of how I was a victim, how they were wrong, and all the things. And then just replaying it. And the thing is, when I was recognizing that I was ruminating on it, I was also recognizing that picture of like the past, the future, and like you're missing the whole present. Like I recognize, like, snap, like I'm not even present. And this whole thing is taking me out of my game. So yeah.
Okay. I'm curious as to know, when was maybe your first notice of, I feel different, or something has shifted, or things, I feel myself applying this lesson in my day-to-day?
Well, I will share this story that there's been many moments. But one moment is coming to me with my son, who is 11. He did something that I didn't like, but I'm forgetting the exact specific, but I just remembered, like, I was so upset, and I remember I was doing my best to be present. But even in my presence, like, I was just like, okay, I'm not going to yell. But I don't know if you ever do this as a parent, where you're not yelling, but you're talking very aggressively, but you're not actually yelling. So in your mind, you're like, okay, I'm not yelling, but like I was really aggressive. And I was, it was something that he did do or didn't do. And I was so upset. Yeah. And I was sitting him down, and I was giving him a talking to. And then afterwards, he started crying. And then that softened me. And then it turned out, and then when I asked him more about him crying, it turned out that what I saw, what I was labeling him as, it was something that it triggered me as he's being disrespectful. He truly was coming from a place, he was like, all I wanted to do was ask this or do, like the detail is escaping me, but basically he clarified that what he was doing or not doing in my eyes had nothing to do with the story that I was making up. But instead it was a genuine, like, I really didn't know. I really was only doing this. I was just, and it's really escaping me. But the moment that, what happened in that moment was like, oh, snap, I just made up a whole story that wasn't even true.
Yes.
And that brought me to the moment, and I comforted him as best as I could. And it shows up a lot with my children. Recently, we had another conversation, that same son, and it was around his speech. Like, he talks fast, and oftentimes I can't understand him, so I'm correcting him and his pronunciation. And so he let me know that he doesn't like that, he doesn't appreciate it, and we had this whole back and forth. And then finally, like that awareness, like initially I was like justifying why I need to correct him, all in my head. But then when I saw how he was responding and his hurt and his pain, I had it makes me think of what we learn in forgiveness, like being able to see it from the other person's view. And then I said, oh, it must be so frustrating to not be understood. And he was like, yeah. So it was a moment where I was able to shift from defending my ways and why I need to do this for you and I want you to, and all he was trying to share was what he was feeling. And initially I couldn't hear that. And so then finally, like when I saw his energy like really being affected, I had to check myself and like, wait a minute, I need to actually listen. But in order to listen, maybe ask him a question so he can share rather than me being defensive. So those moments, what I've learned about forgiveness, it's being able to shift the narrative and see another narrative, and especially one that includes the possibility of the other person's perspective. And so that's, I would love to give you more specifics, but right now
that's so beautiful. And you would never think before forgiveness work, for me, I would never think that this would be an outcome of forgiveness work. Like my ability to listen to another person's point of view. And yet that is one of the natural outcomes of forgiveness work. And it's part of it has to do with us being able to share our story so that we're not so filled up with our own ruminations and junk, right? You've been able to empty some of that. So there's a little bit more space for grace, a little bit more space for awareness and gentleness, and to inquire and to be curious. It's one of my favorite, I think, byproducts of this work is my ability to just be a little bit more curious about the bigger world that I live in. It's not just Joey's world.
And one thing I want to add to that curiosity, what it's helped me, the biggest curious component is asking myself, I wonder, maybe what I'm seeing is not fully true. Like have that curiosity to, really question how I'm seeing things. Is that the full truth of it?
Yeah.
And it helps me slow down and find a pause. And that's something that you often have talked about, is that pause.
Pause. So where else has that shown up for you? So you've touched on your role as a mother and how that's opened up maybe a possibility for a different kind of relationship to your kids. And there is a part of me that I gotta say, it makes me super jealous when people are doing this work when their children are little, because I started this work after my children were already grown. And so there was a lot of mistakes that I made, a lot of things that I find myself wishing that I had better skills around so that I didn't cause so much damage, man. That's sometimes what I say to myself. Joey, you just passed on so much hurt, And so now I'm having to do some work. They're young adults, plenty of time. There's plenty of time, but you have little ones, right? So I have jealousy.
I will address that because I'm actually in my own process of learning how to forgive myself on that very same subject, because I wish I had these tools even when they were younger.
Right.
So now that they're the age where they are, I'm starting to see the effects of how I was showing up before.
Yeah.
And now, and before I used to be like, I got to hurry up and because, their time with me is shortening.
Yes.
So it's like I had this pressure on myself to hurry up and be the perfect mother that I want to be for them.
Which is the idea of striving, which is counterintuitive to mindfulness work, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So recently I've been doing the work of forgiving myself because going back to seeing different perspectives, like before I was in the blaming myself, but now I'm learning self-compassion to recognize how I was showing up and how before was based on the tools that I had. And I'm recognizing that the tools that I had was based on my lack of awareness.
Yeah.
It was based on being reactionary from like past traumas and dramas from childhood, young adulthood,
Absolutely.
that then I had all these coping mechanisms that then when I was rearing and raising my children, I would lash out and react and come from that place without any awareness. It was everybody else's fault.
Right.
Everybody
else's. But you know, this is the other piece. So we just witnessed right here how me with adult kids are looking at you going, oh, I wish I had it. And Nicole, you're looking at, oh, I wish I had. And then I talk to like adults who don't have any kids, but then they see that my interns who are in their 20s are going through this work. They're like, oh, I wish I'd gone through it when I was in my 20s, right? So everybody has that. Here's what I find very interesting and really supportive in my continued journey is that I can sit there and tell myself, well, these are the reasons why I could do it all up in my head. But what I found to be more helpful is when I get that twinge of, oh, and here, I'm going to refer back to Brene Brown's work because I misused the word jealous. It's actually envy. I'm envious of the fact that you're having access to this information prior to when I had access. So envious. But instead of giving myself a litany of checklists to go through and all the what's and why nots and who's it's and what's, all the stuff that can happen here is to actually listen to myself that says, I wish I had this when my kids were young. And then I sit quietly and then be curious about why, because I created a lot of damage. And how do you feel about that, Joey? Well, I feel like super stupid sometimes. I feel really bad. I feel heartbroken for my kids. I wish. And then when I do that, instead of going into my head of checking off, then it represents or showcases for me or presents for me the loss of time, the loss of support, the loss of love from an extended family that I wish I had had. Yeah. And then I can lean into my grief, because one of my biggest issues in this healing process is that I have not grieved many things enough. And I might suggest that just statistically, Nicole, you and I, as Black women walking around on this current planet, we do not grieve enough. We are known as the loud ass strong stereotype for the most part, which almost prevents us from taking a moment and saying, I'm going to cry about this for a minute now. Yeah. Because I do wish in my heart space, I wish I had had that loving kind of support. And that's what that represents. And it's only through grief that we can get to this place of letting go. It's not hiding the grief. Yeah. So when you think about, boy, I wish I had had this when my children were little, what comes up for you? The fact that you didn't have. Yeah, it's definitely grief. And actually grief on both sides, like grieving the loss of connection and time and affection, but then also grieving for recognizing that that person who was showing up also had a whole bunch of trauma within her that she hadn't processed and grieved through. And so there's also this sense of loss of time, of innocence, of ability, and grieving the consequences of all of that. What does your grieving look like, Nicole? For me, it comes up as crying, like just, you know,
like the tears. And it's really interesting because when it comes, I tend to push it away until it's so big that I just have to wail. And so for me, it does come in tears, but reluctantly, because there's also this
We're practicing that, right? We're
yeah.
working on that.
But there's this side that I recognize that I'm still learning how to process my deep, intense feelings and emotions in a way that is holding it, being present with it without becoming addicted to it, and without using that as an excuse to project onto others my pain.
Seems like a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, girl. That's why I'm mindfulness, forgiveness, tools. And because I have what the tools that I'm reaching for and practicing, it's also helping me practice compassion to recognize, okay, this is where I'm at. I know I'm reaching to get there, but this is where I'm at. And I've traveled this far from there. I'm on my way here, but this is where I'm at. And I'm thank you for showing me, like, having those conversations. I'm not quite there, because it's almost like in order to have a conversation, you have to be in the same room, right?
Yes.
Whereas my habit was like, run away,
yes.
run away from bad feelings. So I'm just on the step up. Okay, just be here. Don't go anywhere. Don't run. Don't.
You'll be okay. You won't implode. Yeah, girl.
Exactly. So the next step is, having that, acknowledging and having the conversation. So I'm just working on not running away.
Beautiful, beautiful. So then how does it show up in other areas of our life? Because the kid stuff, that can be like such a minefield, right? Like all the emotions, all of the ways that we have failed, or all of the ways I'm continuing to work on those stories. Sometimes it's a little easier to maybe see observable outcomes or growth where there's not as much at stake, with strangers or coworkers. So are you seeing any benefits to this mindfulness work and forgiveness work in the other roles you play?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I'm in the midst of some big shifts and life transitions and changes. And so just the other day, yes, I think it was yesterday, I was sending out an email. So I'm in the process of looking for work, considering going back to school, just a whole bunch of things. And so there was this email that I've been wanting to send, but I've been reluctant to do it because of the fear and all the things. So the fear was around, I have these questions regarding going back to school. I am considered a non-traditional student. So the fear was bringing up my own insecurities around where I am in my life, with what I have or do not have, how accomplished or unaccomplished I see myself. So all the story and all the story about my insecurities of how I was labeling myself was keeping me from writing an email, because that other side of me is like, who are you? You this X, Y, and Z, that. And what I'm recognizing is the side of me that is so fearful of rejection. It's just like, don't even try. Don't even try, And so yesterday, I got the courage, but one thing that helped me in that moment to gain courage was, I'm creating this story. I don't know this woman who's going to receive it, and how can I know how she's going to perceive me? How can, like, there was this reality check where I was recognizing the story that I was creating and how I included her in my story without even knowing her. I never met her. I don't know how her view on life. She doesn't really know me. How is she going? And so it was this moment of clarity where, in being mindful in that moment of what I was doing, it helped me be aware of the possibilities that I didn't even consider because I was ruminating on, why am I not this far in my career and all this other stuff. And then I had the courage and wrote that email that I.
Okay, you know what I'm gonna ask? I wanna know about, tell me about how you felt, where you carried that fear while you were story making and constricting. And as soon as you had that moment of awareness and then you did the thing, how did you feel? Where do you feel it? I want, you know, I like that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, okay, so it's March. I started this email writing process in, I think, December or January.
Oh, I love it. I love a truth, man. I love that.
So it felt in my body. Remember, I run away. So I was just like, fear, I'm gone. I'm not even gonna reopen it. So
do you disassociate? Like, do you not feel anything?
Yes,
yeah,
I disassociate. Okay. That's my thing. So that's why I'm just learning how to be in the room with my feelings.
Yes.
So yesterday, in feeling that fear, it came up. And one thing for me, the way it shows up in my body is like constriction, shortness of breath, and it's hard. And it also shows up with me needing to like get up and walk away, like a little kid, like I can't sit still. So even though I started yesterday, there were little breaks of, okay, let me walk here, or I got to look this up on Google now, right? I can't stay here on this. And so I was noticing all the different ways, but because I'm practicing mindfulness, one thing that's really cool now is that I'm watching me. Do you understand? Like,
yes.
Before I would be in it and I couldn't see what I was doing. But yesterday I'm like, okay, I see you're uncomfortable. I see you, opening up other tabs. I see you needing to get up and go here. I see you, so there was this other part of me that was present even with my shenanigans. And so
taking care of you. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. And so then once I wrote the email, and of course, I had to proofread it like umpteen times.
Umpteen times.
And then I pressed the send, but there was this relief. Like, it was almost like, I have to admit, I felt not only relief, but it was like, yay, I did it. It was so like, I didn't get a reply yet, but it wasn't even about the reply, but I was really proud of myself for doing this action that was so fearful to me.
Yeah.
And knowing that I did it.
Yes.
And I didn't die.
And you didn't die. Girl, so a month ago, maybe it was 2 months ago, I get this certified letter. Mailman pulls all the way up and is like, click, 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 you need to sign for this. And it's from the IRS. Do you know that is the most stress inducing? I know for a lot of Americans, but it is what stops me in my tracks. I'm like, but you know what? Just take all my money. Just take everything is how I feel. It's like, I just don't want to deal with it. I do not open the letter. I just hold on to it. It's a certified, I sign for it. I do not open it. I do not open it. I do not open it. In the past, that embarrassed me so much, like not feeling at ease or at comfort with money related stuff. It would embarrass me so much that I wouldn't even go get help. So I was doing all my taxes. Like, I would be up for hours and hours reading and using programs to do it myself so that I wouldn't have to tell somebody else that I feel like this around this. Last year, I finally got a CPA. And so I thought, you know what, just make an appointment with Sandra. And what I noticed that I need, so same thing, as I've uncoupled myself from the being and the doing, right? I'm not wrestling in there and all muddled up. There is a piece of me that is very aware and is watching me and is, for the most part, doing a good job of kind of watching over me now. But I was like, just make that appointment. Take in the, I don't know how many 5 letters that you got before the certified one, and just give it to her and just tell her you're scared. And so to me, and as soon as she opened it, right? And it was just like, hey, you need to pay this amount because the last year I had filed late and it didn't pay it, right? But in my mind, I was getting an audit and I was going to jail, right?
The worst.
And also, I deserve it and I belong there, right? Because it's the story making is so crazy. This is the thing that I'm afraid of. So the growth in that story, the victory dance for you, the awareness for you, for me, it was like, I know I'm going to feel better when I'm doing this with somebody else who knows what they're doing, and that I'm able to ask for help, because that's my biggest issue. That was my impact of trauma, was that I thought I had to do all of life by myself. So these little things that are little for other people are not little for me, and then they're not little for you, right? So to notice those moments as victories, to notice that those moments where we were able to do something and breathe and go, oh, I feel better, without it making us feel silly or stupid or like I should know better, I'm grown. I think that's the piece that I just want everybody to hear. So you're in good company. This is what we mean when we say you're in good company. Yeah. Oh, I love that you sent the letter, because it's not about, Joey, can you pay that or not pay it? Can you, is Nicole going to get a yes or a no? It's us, our story making, willing to tell a different story, willing to get other help.
And you know what just came up for me now? It's like, it's about showing up for myself in that moment, because often the fear usually makes me run away, or usually makes me not be present in some capacity, whether it's shutting down, disassociating, but the willingness to be present and show up for myself is the victory. Like even how, you know, with you, you showed up for yourself, but you also equipped yourself with what you needed to show up for yourself. And I think that's the mindfulness work. Forgiveness work is like really being present, but willingly so, like where you're choosing and intentionally showing up for yourself.
That's right. That's the other favorite word, is we talk about curiosity, but even before that, we talk about willingness, especially around grief, and more in specific populations than others. But it is about, what is your willingness to grieve? And for you and me, we're a little bit averse, right? So the getting into the practice of it feels foreign, feels difficult, feels like there were times at the beginning where I'm like, I can't start because I don't know if I'll ever end. And then I might die of dehydration if I start crying, right? That catastrophe thinking is no longer. Because the willingness to do it again and again, I have started to prove to myself that I am trustworthy around some of this.
What you just said stirred up something when you said life-changing. It also is such a great tool for navigating life-changing.
Yes.
You know, not only is it life-changing, but change is the nature of life. And I think our reptilian brain, you know, we get all fearful about changes that we do not author. And so this it's been equipping me with this presence of learning how to navigate the changes, the unexpected or expected, you know, but in a way where instead of trying to control everything out there to make it be what I want it to be, there's this like internal self-control, and not even self-control. And it isn't like controlling like you're capping something, but more so this inner awareness that just helps us choose in a way that makes things easier. And I'm like, it gives us breathing room.
Even your first story, when you were sharing, it brought up for me, when you were talking about your son, it brought up for me, you know, when we're trying to control in the traditional sense of that word, it's like, I'm not yelling, but everybody knows you're pissed, and that kind of control, right? Which is fear-based. I am managing hostility is what I now know I was doing. But it wasn't coming from love.
Yeah.
And now it's not even control, it's the authentic or emotional responsibility that I am now able to take that's different than managing my hostility. It's actually, okay, wait, what does love look like in this situation?
Yeah.
And how can I
That's a
show up
great
to meet
question.
that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from there, then your stories are different. If you're like, my baseline is love versus this fear of I'm going to lose my brain and then my kids are going to get out of control. And then they're going to be Black people in this very hostile world where they're going to get, right?
That's my thought, you know? Oh my goodness. Like, have you been in my brain? Like, that's how, like, all this escalation of this and the bigger picture of why this little moment counts, because all the things, and it's going to lead them, and they're 2 little Black boys, and you know how the world, you know, like, it's just.
Girl, I raised 2 little Black boys in this world and now they're men. That fear is legit because this is a hostile world where the systems are not created to protect them or us, right? So that kind of catastrophe thinking makes sense. So more so, we have to come from that place of centeredness and from love, right? Because we can't fight fear with fear.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't skilled, that's what I thought I had to do, was like arm them even more, right?
Yeah.
No, we get to love them even more. Yeah, it's a different approach.
Yeah.
And also then we got to take care of ourselves, because it's a scary thing to go, okay, this love thing, I get it. Is it gonna keep them alive? And the answer is not always yes, right?
Yeah.
So that's where faith,
Yeah.
faith comes in. Yeah. So rooted right now, right? Fully in this present moment. What does the future of Nicole's life look like? What are your hopes? What are your wishes? And are you willing to share any of that?
Yeah, definitely. One of my big visions is to really bring this kind of work, healing work, awareness work, transformation work to women in particular, because I really have this sense that with all the isms that's in the world, part of a writing is also helping, not even helping, but doing what I can to play my part of gathering the women, because women, in my opinion, it's in our DNA to work together. It's in our DNA to think about future generations. It's in our DNA where every child is my child. You know, that kind of like, I'm thinking more than this moment, but I'm also thinking in sustainable ways, just like how nature does for us, like always providing and nurturing. And for me, the bigger vision for myself is to, okay, so one of the things that I just came to is that in order for me to show up in the way that I want to serve women in this bigger capacity for, in the tools that I bring, I recognize that I had to embody and be in practice with the tools that I'm saying that are important. And so for me, that my bigger vision for myself is to be a leader of my own life by my life example.
Beautiful, Nicole. Thank you. Do you have any last pearl of wisdom that you'd like to drop for all of us before we say goodbye?
I would just say that no matter where you are on your journey with the work, just always claim that you are doing the work. The fact that you're aware that you're wanting to do it, that's already doing the work. The fact that you're aware that you're already doing the work.
Already.
And doing the work is a process. So if you're always in process and aware that you're in process, like, you're good.
You're good. On that note, man, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your willingness to share your stories. I really appreciate that, Nicole. It's been beautiful spending this morning with you. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for watching. Bye.